Yeah. So think about it, right? The good news is you already know how to do this.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. As my dad would say when I bring a C plus home on my report card. Now that I know you can get grades this high, I'm going to expect you to do it all the time. Dang it.
And here we go again, against the odds. It doesn't take a genius. Here are Mark and Mike.
Ramsey!
Marshall, you have put together a nice little list for us today, talking about the CDK outage that many of our clients have experienced and the things that help you through times of crisis like that. I'm getting right down to the nub of it and starting this episode for two reasons. One is I want to make sure we get through all 5 of these items because they're all pretty strong. The other is I want to go ahead and state up front that you told me there would be an I see dead people moment at the end. Quote unquote, there would be an I see dead people moment at the end.
Oh, yes. Just call me
Not
M.
I
Night.
see dead people, not ICY, but Sixth Sense. I see with my eyes dead people.
Exactly. Right. So,
Okay.
yeah, for this episode, just refer to me as M. Night Shyamalan. That would be.
Mike, I'm not going to refer to you as M. Night Shyamalan, but go ahead. Yeah.
I don't blame you. So, yeah, CDK outage for those of you living in a cave for the last couple of months. 15,000 dealerships, 50% of the dealerships in America lost all of their computer systems. They were thrust back into the dark ages, handwriting, tickets and buyers orders and everything, parts and it was just this insane crisis. I mean, it was big enough where economists in the midst of it were talking about that it would affect the GDP, the gross domestic product of the United States of America.
No doubt about it.
It would show up there, and you're going, that's big.
Yes.
So it was interesting. We got some of the folks who were leading their stores through this thing, and this was after we started to come out of it. And we were asking them for bright spots, as we always do at the beginning. Right? What worked? What did you do that was positive? How did you get your team through this this incredible crisis? And they started throwing out stuff, and lo and behold, it's the stuff that's on this list.
Yeah.
And so,
some of the things. List, Mike. It's a really good list.
Yeah, the list is perfect because we've heard it organically, and now that we've kind of enumerated it. So the first thing they did, they said, well, we just had to communicate clearly and frequently. Right? We had to talk about what we knew, what we didn't know, and we had to talk to people often. We had to tell the truth. We had to be transparent. We had to give regular updates. All right, so this is what we figured out. Here's what we're going to do next. All right, that didn't work. All right, we're scrapping that. We're going to try this thing up. So the updates and the channels were open in both directions.
Yeah, had to be two-way.
Yeah. You guys, the frontline people, as is almost always the case in a mature organization, the frontline people were coming up with the innovations and the ideas and the solutions and then feeding them back up to management.
Yeah.
Hey, I figured out a way that we can track parts for each repair order, and I created a spreadsheet. All right, I need to see that. All right, so we'll disseminate that widely. We'll get that as standard practice during that. So the thing was going back and forth. It wasn't just you always think it's a crisis. Right, I'm going to stand at the bow of the ship and stow the missing mast, and, kill all that man. And no, there was incredible communications, regular updates, but it was back and forth. It was two-way communication.
And it's so the first of the 5 items is communicate clearly and frequently. And as you say, it's got to be transparent. It's got to be regular in terms of updating people. And there's got to be these open channels. That last one, I think, is the especially juicy one because, sometimes transparently, it's going to be transparently, we don't know. We don't have an answer to what's going on right now. Stay with us. We'll give you an update tomorrow. But when it's a two-way communication, and this is something we've talked about, I think, in the last episode and maybe the one before that, fears, frustrations, and failures that we've got to capture, getting that kind of feedback from our people. We want them to be safe enough to raise their hand and say, I don't know what's going on. And we still want that. And this is an especially key time to not let anybody use that as like sort of a moment where they can take us emotional hostage, where they're freaking out and causing everything else to shut down because they're just not comfortable. And we're not going to play that game, which kind of leads us into, I believe, your second item here.
Oh yeah, dovetails very nicely. So item 2, and this is what we heard from them. They provided strong and visible leadership.
Yeah.
And this was fascinating because I was on some Reddit channels, and on Reddit they were, I had a service advisor channel, and on some of the stores on the Reddit channel,
You told me this.
when the crisis started, the manager left the building.
He's just gone
and never came back. Just abandoned the team. Right, this is too much. I can't deal with it, and left. And the team was not feeling all that great about their leader at that time. Awesome. And so stay visible. And we had our guys say, I was out and about constantly. Right. And so when you look at visible leadership, right, you got to be visible and accessible. Mm-hmm. Just them seeing you on the job gives them hope. Right. So I remember, the soldiers in World War II, they loved General Patton.
Yep.
And one of the things he did was sometimes he'd ride in a tank with his head sticking out, and he'd be right there in the middle of the fight.
Yeah.
And they loved the fact that he was visible. He was there. He was with them during the battle. Yep. And that was cool. The other thing that number 2 is make decisive actions. Mm-hmm. All right. So I've listened to all this, I've listened to 3 different ways we could move forward. Just pick one and say, that's the one we're going to do.
Yeah.
We're going to do this. There's no, we'll revisit it at a certain point, but for now, here's how we're going to handle this. This is what I need you to do. This is what, so I've gotten the open channel. I've taken the feedback, but at some point, somebody has to make a decision, make it decisively.
Right.
And the last one under this category is lead by example. Your energy is the team's energy. So if you're running around with your hair on fire and we're all going to die, it's not going to bode well for the energy of your people. Yeah. And so whatever energy, if you're cool, you're calm, you got you got a positive attitude, that's going to permeate your team. And if you're nervous and scared and it's visible, that's going to permeate your team.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting one because of the fact that, we spend so much time in our day and age talking about how there's not this heroic leader from the front, right? You just said that in your first statement that we're not going to have, you on the bow, commanding everything. But we do need somebody to make decisions. Somebody is the leader. Somebody is in charge. And there's the book, It's Okay to Be the Boss, right? They need to have a boss who is going to make those decisions. But he's going to do it in the context of a team. It's not going to be a vacuum. He's going to be, he's going to be using two-way communication. He's going to be present with you and gathering intel and setting an example as he makes those decisions. So, okay, so provide strong and visible leadership. That's number 2, staying present, making decisive decisions, leading by example. Number 3,
support your team.
Oh, that team that we were just talking about.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So now I've got these people. I'm providing I'm role modeling the energy. I'm setting the tone. We've decided a course of action, and at the same time, I've got to be empathetic and understanding.
Yeah.
I've got to understand what they're going through and to acknowledge the pain, the emotional, the mental impact of what it is that they're dealing with, and just being there to support when needed, sometimes just from an emotional standpoint. And so it is a crisis. People are scared. People are frustrated. People are nervous. People, the future is uncertain. Nobody knew how this was going to turn out. We didn't know if it was going to be down for a week, a month, or there was speculation that it would never come back.
Yep.
And that you would lose decades worth of information that would all have to be rebuilt from scratch. So with that understanding in mind, while you're being visible, you can support your folks. Resources and tools. These guys were amazing. Yeah, right. So somebody figured out we needed a form that would do this. And the manager's on the phone immediately to the supplier. Hey, I need 5,000 of these. Right.
Right.
Send them on down. All right. This is what the team needs. These are the resources. Whether it was actual tools and materials to do the job, or sometimes it was just providing lunch, providing
Yeah.
a meal, a snack, so that while they were in the midst of this crisis, right, they could at least have a little bit of comfort food and sustain their nourishment. And then the last one under this category of support your team is be flexible.
Yeah.
So you're gonna make decisive decisions, but you still have to be flexible. Everybody handles crisis in a different way.
Right.
And everybody's at a different point in that. So some people might be able to move farther and faster than the person next to them. I got to be flexible. I've got to figure out the deadlines, the arrangements, the things that I can do, and know that productivity is not going to be uniform across all the people, given how they deal with crisis.
Yeah, I've seen this play out in different ways, but I'll mention one in particular that kind of surprised me. It happened once during the crisis where the Great Recession was on, and GM and Chrysler were shutting down dealerships, like they were going out of business. They were pulling the franchises, and then it happened again during the pandemic, when people were really early on worried about health and safety. And in both cases, what happened was I showed up in one case in person, and in the other case by Zoom, and they said, "Mark, could you open us in prayer?" I was like, "What?" And but I was, of course, they knew I was a Christian, and I was happy to do that. I was excited to do that. But just think about the presence of mind of the leader to say, "My people need to know that they're not alone, that other people are supporting them, that that there's a bigger picture here." And so those were special times. We have had the pleasure of getting to meet Joel Furno with Citron, who has a similar thing going on with his company, because there's always crisis situations with his employees. He has some very young employees.
Mm-hmm.
There's always these opportunities where people are at least feeling in crisis, and so they have essentially a prayer request system where people can submit prayer requests.
Mm-hmm.
You can learn about that on some of Joel's interviews that he's done on YouTube. But who would have thought that that would be part of the empathetic tools that people might need? But there's a very sort of a left brain, left wing example of the kind of stuff people need. So supporting your team any way you can.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, both mentally and physically.
Yeah.
So
So
number 4,
number 4.
maintain focus on goals and priorities.
Okay.
Right. So you think about the distractions of a crisis. There's so and the rumors, the innuendo, the speculation, all that stuff distracts people from the goals. And so here's one or two things that we need to keep our eye on.
Right.
And making sure our customers all get communicated with, making sure that these cars get fixed by a certain what is the goal, and I'm going to break that down into short-term goals. And so maybe here's our goal for this hour, for this half the day, for the next part, right? So we're going to have short-term goals, and so that they're manageable, and which dovetails into the third aspect of this, which is to monitor the progress. So I've got short-term goals. We're watching the progress. I'm not going to, it's a crisis, right? I'm not going to set it and forget it. This is not an aim and walk away kind of thing.
Right.
Because in times of crisis, there's so many uncertainties that you can't be perfectly sure that what you're setting out to do is going to work. And so we got to clarify the priorities, set some short-term goals, and then stay on top of those, monitor them as we go.
I saw this happen with an organization that set a very lofty sales target. Unfortunately, they did it for the year 2020, and the pandemic happened. But I mean, they had created signage, they had bracelets made up, all sorts of things where this was going to be the driver for the year. And And, to their credit, they basically said, we're going to push that aside. And here are the things in the short term we need to focus on to make sure that everybody's safe, that, our departments are still able to earn money and so on and so forth. So, the fact that they recentered their people on some short term goals was the smartest thing they could have done. And they really lost 0 people through the experience. The crisis didn't cost them in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. And then that, stay flexible.
Yep.
The world changes.
Right.
The pandemic, I think, would qualify as a crisis.
That's right.
So I'm gonna put that in the category. Dispute me if you believe otherwise in the comments. All right. So number 5, the last one is foster team cohesion and collaboration.
Yeah.
Right. Encourage teamwork. And we saw this was fascinating because the guys we were talking to, the teamwork occurred across even stores.
Yeah.
So we'd spent 2 years getting these guys comfortable with each other. And lo and behold, one store would figure something out and they would share it with their sister stores and say, hey, we figured out a way to track this. We figured out a way to get these calls made. And so it was, there was teamwork happening within departments, within stores, and even within auto groups that were high performing auto groups where they were making those things happen.
Right.
The other aspect of this, build trust. So you got to provide a safe environment for people to share their concerns and ideas,
right.
And being open to that and letting them know that this is what we're looking for and it's safe. Right. No, there's no bad ideas at this point. We need everybody's input. And then the part of that goes into that would be celebrate the wins.
Yeah.
When somebody comes up with something, it's high fives, it's recognition, it's appreciation, letting them know, man, that's awesome. Right? That's going to help us tremendously, and making sure that everybody knows this person is part of an achievement, a success, a win, something that helped us get through this crisis.
So it's not enough to say, good job, everybody, or even good job, so-and-so. And we've talked about this, it's AID, action, impact, desire for the future. Bob came up with a form that actually absolutely transformed how many cars we were able to process through the service lane during the CDK outage. Man, it literally saved our rear ends. And Bob, please keep it up. It's just so powerful. Keep doing what you're doing. Mm-hmm. That is true recognition, not just a generic, I'm rooting for you. Thanks for all that you do. We've talked about that before.
Yeah. Nice job.
Yeah. What is it that you did?
And we had, these great managers were giving attribution to the solution creators. Exactly. And so, all right, my parts guy did this,
yes.
And it's fabulous. And so
really clever things too. That was the mind-blowing part of it.
Yeah. These guys came up with things that in some cases, I'm sure some of them will live on.
Yep.
As best practices because they found more effective ways to do some certain behaviors.
100%.
So we listened to this and we've been talking to these guys about leadership for a couple of years, and it was so exciting to hear the stories of they did these 5 things and they didn't just survive this crisis. In some cases, they thrived. Mm-hmm. They actually maintained the same level of business and or in some cases exceeded that level of business.
Last year's same month. Yep.
Yeah, it was just insanely cool. And then at some point it dawned on us, and this would be our sixth sense.
Here it comes, everybody.
M. Night Shyamalan moment, where it dawned on us that these are the exact same behaviors. The behaviors to lead through a crisis are the exact same behaviors as needed to lead change.
There it is.
Wow.
That's it.
It's the exact same systems. What's fascinating to me is that in times of crisis, they instinctively did these things.
Yeah.
Right. There was a few phone calls and, hey, what do you think about this? But for the most part, it was just, I knew this is what my team needed. So this is what I did.
Yeah.
I really didn't think too much about it. And they hit the right notes. they go to change something, they go to change something big, and yet they don't have the same epiphany. They don't have the same realization that, okay, I'm going to have to communicate clearly and frequently. I'm going to have to be strong and visible. I'm going to have to be supporting these people as they're going through this change. I'm going to have to make sure they stay focused on the goals and priorities. And I'm going to have to foster collaboration until we get this thing established, whatever the change might be. And you're like, wow, that's amazing.
Well, I think about that in terms of reactivity and proactivity. A crisis happens to me, and I have to react to it. And I've got a really good list of 5 things that I do in the moment, if I'm with it. And then there are things that are just, you might say wildly important goals, things that are just really important, but they're not going to happen if I don't proactively go and put some attention and resources to them. Well, that's change, right? That's a radical change that you're trying to make, and you can't focus on everything. The 4 disciplines of execution talks about this. The wildly important goal, you need to focus on just 2 or 3 things and have a scoreboard and update it regularly and meet about it regularly. And it sounds a lot like some of the things in this list. I almost think that this list, it's the 5 things that you should be doing if you're going to do a 4 disciplines of execution approach. You need to be doing it this way with these 5 activities in mind, because you have to be proactive if it's going to happen. You have to be proactive.
Oh yeah. So yeah, as you're talking, I had this thought that change is nothing more than a self-inflicted crisis.
Yeah. 100%.
Ooh, that's
Yeah.
a quote. We've put that like in bold letters somewhere. The
Get
change
that
is
on
a
the t-shirt.
self-inflicted crisis.
Yeah.
Your point of one's proactive, one's reactive. Yeah,
Yeah.
but an actual crisis we react to. Change is proactive. We did it. All I have to do now is see it as I've just created a crisis.
Yeah.
By blowing up the system or trying to introduce this new process, new software, whatever the thing might be.
The like you've pointed out, these moments of awakening, when did you realize that you needed it? And then what was the moment of crisis where you decided, I'm going to make a change, with diet or exercise or what have you. And that's what we're sort of doing here, guys. This is so important that nothing else matters if we don't accomplish this thing this year.
Exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, I love it.
Yeah. So think about it, right? The good news is you already know how to do this.
Yep.
Yeah. As my dad would say when I bring a C+ home on my report card. Now that I know you can get grades this high, I'm going to expect you to do it all the time. Dang it. All right. Same with this. I've seen you lead in this manner. I've seen you take these steps to get your team to a better place in times of crisis. I need to see this when you're in the midst of making change.
Yeah.
Right. I need to see these exact same behaviors, and I already seen you do it once, so I know it's not a doing thing. It's not a skill thing. It's just a will thing. Right. You got to have the will to do it.
Yeah. That's good stuff. Well, I like the episode. Nice and tight little 5-point list, and it applies to anybody at any time who wants to make a change. So hopefully this is something you can take to your team, listeners, both of you. And I guess, Mike, one change we'd like to see everybody make is to like and subscribe to this post, comment on it, do things like that. Anything that helps spread the word about It Doesn't Take a Genius. So if you would be so kind, we would appreciate it. And anything else?
No, we celebrated 5,000 downloads.
Yes,
Very cool.
Absolutely did.
Yeah, so another milestone in our evolution. So yeah, keep spreading the good word, and we'll keep sharing our observations, our thoughts, our tips, and our ideas. So we appreciate you.
Indeed.
All right, take it away. Our fabulous announcer works for free, Mr. Wolf. Love that guy.
And that's it. Join us next time when you'll hear Mike say, well, I'm sure he'll say something pithy. Don't miss it. Next time, It Doesn't Take a Genius.
That's good enough.